I just did this short on YouTube about how I was using dev containers to auto start my MakeDocs server. It's wild because one, easily the most successful short I've ever made to date, and I'm gonna just blame my title game on that. But the other side of that was a lot of people have really moved into using VS Code as their primary code editor for Python, and they really want the ability to get as much of it out of it as possible. That being said, I talked about dev containers, and I'm still on the fence with them a little bit. Like I like dev containers personally, but I can understand where they could be a problem for folks. Like if you don't have a computer powerful enough to have a bunch of containers just sitting on there, and you don't want to go through that process of having to go through and delete them or doing this pruning session and cleaning routine, I totally get that. So one of the things that I actually did before making said famous short was try to figure out how I could set up VS Code tasks to do the same thing. And these are different because they're not going to run automatically, although they could, but they're still going to be really quick to fire off. And I think by showing you how I set those up, it's really going to unlock the ability to do the same thing, maybe not with MakeDocs like I'm doing, but maybe something like starting your Django server or your Flask app, or starting Green Unicorn or whatever. So let's dive into that. So now the first thing that I did with this project was I created a new task, and you can find those tasks over in task.json. If you don't have a task.json file already, you can create one by opening up the command palette and just typing in configure tasks. And then from there, you can say configure a task from the template, select others, and then it's just gonna give you an empty task template file with some of the basic stuff that you need to create your task. Now with those tasks, you're gonna have a little bit of configuration that you have to set up, and there are plenty of options. There's a whole schema for it, but really you only need a few things. You need to tell it what type of task you're doing, and then you also need to tell it what the command is. And then there's a few other things that we'll walk through. So you're gonna need your label, which is basically how it shows up in VS Code. For me, I just called it MakeDocs serve. And then you're also going to need the type, which is shell. The other option that you can use is process, but that is kind of designed to run in the background using some of the built-in processes and instances that are running in VS Code. And the problem with that that I ran into personally was I couldn't get it to use the right version of Python. I work with many different versions of Python ranging from like 3.9 to 3.11. So having it choose the wrong Python client, even though I have it set, even though I have virtual environments, still caused me a lot of problems locally. So instead, what I have it doing is I set the type to shell, and then in the next attribute called command, I just pass the exact Python interpreter that I want, which is the Python interpreter that's inside of my virtual environment. And I created that environment using VS Code. They actually have a create environment command that you can use, and you can set your virtual environment. It'll pick up any requirements that you might already have. And then from there, I just say, hey, virtual environment binary Python, run MakeDocs and serve it, and then point it to my MakeDocs.yaml. So basically it's that same exact command that I talked about in that short that I did in my post start command. I'm just calling it directly in that task. And then the last thing that you got to provide it is a group. In that group, I have the kind, which is a build. That tells it, I guess, what type of task you're doing is like a build step. And then I have the set to isDefault equal to true. I wanted to show you that because no matter what you're doing in Python, if you have this task that you're doing so many times, whether it's just running the same script over and over again as you're testing or running your tests, which VS Code does also have a cool testing implementation that kind of gives you more information. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend you do it this way. I would recommend doing it through the test suite itself. If you've got some command that you're running a lot or that you need to do and you just want to have it available to you, this is a great way to do that. And it's 5 lines of JSON. It's really easy to get started with it. All you have to do is go to the command palette and hit configure, create new task, configuration menu, optional. I hope that this tip was helpful. And if it was, let me know by liking the video, of course. And if you want more tips and tricks like this, be sure to subscribe as well. I'm Jay Miller. Until next time, talk to you later.